Well, here we are, big time art dealer coming here to talk to all these academics. I was lucky to know Edith Hamlin very well. She was sort of my mentor and friend, and she lived here from 1937 until 1963. And I'm sure that many of you have known her because you're all old goat fogies just like me. I was an art dealer and a well-known art dealer to a lot of the people from Utah because we were from Utah. In 2000, a gentleman by the name of Clayton Williams in Salt Lake called me and he said, you know, I have 116 photographs, albumen photographs, that were done by Jack Hillers of the John Wesley Powell expedition. And I figured that you live in southern Utah, you probably ought to take a look at them and maybe buy them from me. I said, sure, you got 116 original albumen lithograph or photographs by Jack Hillers, because us art dealers are all the same. We're looking for something we make money on. And I thought, geez, I'd do the math. Let's see, 50,000 costs, 116 times 1,000 to 2,000 a piece. That's about $200,000 worth of stuff. I think I'd probably better buy it. So I did and spent the money on it. And then I had the collection framed and showed it during the Winter Olympics. And all that time I had in mind, I will start selling them one by one and get my money back. Well, somebody, I can't remember who, it was probably Nelson Wadsworth who did the books on Utah history and Utah photography, and happens to be my cousin. And when I called him and told him I had these photographs, he again said, sure you do. You must have cut them out of a magazine or something. Nobody's got 116 original Hillers photographs from the John Wesley Powell days. So he came to see them and he went, holy shit, you do have 116 original photographs from John Wesley Powell. So we'll start here if I can figure out how to do the clicker. The photographs are inclusive of the Paiute Nation throughout the area that you see here, and all the way to Las Vegas, to the north to Richfield, to Paiute Nation, but specifically the Kaibab Nation. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today, because they're located right here, where we are. I met somebody from the Kaibab group, they call it the Kaibab Band, and she told me that, she said, where do you live? I said, I live in Orderville, Mount Carmel area. She said, those are our grounds. That's where we lived. She was in the Kaibab group out here on the Arizona Strip. So that's what the group is today that we're going to talk about. Here's the letter that I got from Clayton Williams authenticating this collection. We call that the provenance collection. And as you can see, he says here that they are originals and that if I need to reproduce them, I can, because they're in the public domain, and we all know what that means. Somehow this guy doesn't want to work for me. There we go. So the Kaibab band of the Paiute lived here in this area in that year, 1873, when John Wesley Powell and Jack Hillers come into the area. Now, the second trip down to Colorado in 1872, was the one in which they took photography along. And I'm not going to talk about the guy Bingham that they kicked out of the boat and sent down the road, because then Hillers took over the job of photographing the trip down the river. In the meantime, they came back here to Kanab, and John Wesley Powell said, "What in the world am I going to do all this time in wintertime, summertime? I've already been down the river. I've got 1,000 pounds of photography equipment. It's the same kind of equipment the guy used during the Civil War. It was state of the art. It had a twin lens stereo camera, and so they were able to make 2 3x5 photographs at once with this camera." So he wanted to get more money to begin to go out and do more geological surveys. And so he thought, well, why don't I just take these photographs of all the tribes in this area right here and send them back to Congress, these 2 photographs, the Congress in a portfolio, and they can decide whether they're going to give me enough money to keep going. And that's what he did. So there's 116 photographs in the collection, and I'm only going to talk about the Kaibab group today. This first one is the arrow maker and his daughter, and you can see when I bought the collection, I looked on the back of every single photograph, and there's the label. This label that says exactly what it was. They're the Indians of the Colorado Valley, Kaibavits, meaning Kaibab, and this is the arrow maker and his daughter. The second group, Indians of the Colorado Valley, the Kaibavits, a tribe of the Paiutes living in the Kaibab Plateau near the Grand Canyon, and a group of men in full dress. Now, let's dispel that rumor that Powell dressed them up to look like Indians. He did not dress them up to look like Indians. He dressed the girls up to put clothes on them because they were naked. And Victorian America in 1873 doesn't want to see any naked Indians out here that John Wesley Powell photographed. The other thing that you have to recognize is that Powell and Hillers had to learn some words in every language of those they were photographing. And those words were, somebody knows, stand very still. Because that photograph was going to take about 3 seconds to make it. So that's what they did. So they dressed them up, yes, they put clothes on them. And number 2, they stand very still because they are posed, yes, they are posed photographs. The great painter, Thomas Moran, accompanied them on the trip, and he helped them to pose these people. This is Chuampik shooting a rabbit. He's got a bow and arrow ready to go, and he was probably told to do that 15 times till he got one that he wasn't moving in. And he still moved a little bit. Yua, who was a wife of Chuampik, the chief of the Kaibab. Stately woman. Yua on a rock. Again, she's posed, but she's standing very still. This is a woman grinding. You know, they lived up in the valley in Orderville and Mount Carmel and Glendale. And we found on the property lots and lots and lots of grindstones So many that you can't even count them. There's so many of them. And it's because that valley was loaded with corn. And to this day, the best corn in the county grows right there. And so you know that they were there farming, and they were there to get the deer, and they're there to get the fish in the stream in the Virgin River. And that's the way they lived. I'll give you a couple of seconds or two on these pictures. And there she is again. Her name is Kuratu. Now this next photograph is called The Empty Cradle. And I know that everybody here has seen that at one time or another in books, magazines. And it's a statement of a lady who has lost her baby. Thomas Moran made a painting of this that is now in the Smithsonian. Two girls standing posed, Kuratu and Mutates. It's number 10 in the collection of 116. The circle dance in full costume. I don't know what the location of that mountain is beyond, but it's awfully familiar, isn't it? Again, the circle dance in their winter costume farther away. And it's from a different perspective. The basket maker. You can't say they were a romantic tribe like the Ute tribe. They didn't have teepees, but they used whatever they could, whether it was a cave or an edifice like this. Group of women in full dress, number 11. Kindling a fire by friction. Nowadays we think about starting a fire and we got to use a little bit of propane or gas or something, gasoline. Unless you're a Boy Scout and you do it by friction. Showing the gear of the feather headdress. And that was their headdress. That wasn't something that they brought in to dress them up. That's what they used. Pile of Indians. Game of wolf and deer. One little, two little, three little Indians. The water carriers, the big round jugs made of reeds or whatever. You know, a lot of people say that Powell would never have survived this country in these areas if it weren't for this tribe and this group of people. The Paiute Nation saved him his bacon, actually, and many times showing him where the water pockets were and the best places to be and so on. Steed carriers. There's many photographs in this group where the girls are not wearing clothing, but very few. Okay. Now, Maynard Dixon was married to a photographer by the name of Dorothea Lange. Dorothea Lange was America's photographer of this Depression. And a famous photograph is called The Migrant Mother. And it's a mother sitting in a migrant camp in a tent, nursing a baby, just sitting there. This is certainly equal to Dorothea Lange's photograph of the migrant mother. I didn't have to tell you who that is. This one's quite famous. You've probably seen it a lot if you followed Powell at all. And he's looking for the water pocket. Please tell me, where do I find water? He always seems to hide his right arm. He doesn't have one. Proud of their grandson. Looks like you got a cake or something there. Probably they had birthday cakes too, who knows? One sivu, or a young antelope. The rabbit skin. And a very famous one called Manuni, the Mormons and the Gentiles. And you notice that John Wesley Powell is standing to the left of the picture with the group. I'm sure that many people have seen this because it's kind of a famous photograph. I say that it's out of Perea, but I don't know. And we printed a book called The People. And it talks about the fact that Powell would never have survived the grueling travels around the area without the help of the Paiute Nation. So, there you have it. Thank you very much. If you have questions, I'd be glad to answer them.